It looks like we are going to get an early start this year to cleaning up some of the mulch and rock beds, whether it be cutting back perennials, pruning back some of the shrubs. And this is a bed that I mostly cleaned up last fall. I did a video on that. I'll flash a card across the top where you can check description. But now we're going to continue on and get some of the shrubs pruned, the perennials cut back. And we're mid-March here, Northern Great Plains, Zone 4. And oftentimes we've still got quite a bit of snow this time of year. So I feel fortunate that we can get ahead of the game here and get some of these chores completed. Hey everybody, I'm Kevin, and yeah, we are fortunate that snow has disappeared earlier this year. Oftentimes we can have snow kind of hanging around till mid-April, so I think we're going to get about a month early start. Now today, it's mid-March, we're about just above freezing, I think 35 degrees Fahrenheit, and but there's no problem cutting back some of the shrubs. A lot of the different herbaceous perennials, we can finish cutting them to the ground. And the thing about perennials, I used to always cut them back in the fall because I just had more time. But now that my schedule has changed, I usually leave a lot of my perennials until spring. Not only does that provide a lot of extra browsing, different food and cover for the birds, the different animals, but it also, I think, helps protect the root system of those perennials. Leaving those tops on, leaves can blow in, providing protection. And then also those tops, they're going to create a swirl point for the snow to kind of build up in those areas and help insulate the roots. But mostly today, I kind of want to cover not only cutting back some of the perennials, different shrubs, but some of the tools that I use that I always work along with. And we'll start with the Felco. Now the Felcos, this is a Pruners. There's many different styles. I've had this about 30 to 35 years, and it's just an absolutely essential tool that you don't want to be left without. And I use a pocket on my pants to keep it handy coming in and out, but you can also use some of the different holders. Most of them are designed to use a belt. Some of them have a buckle on the back, so you can just attach it that way. And the head shears, I'm still pretty old-fashioned. I use this probably more than the automated shears. It just works so good for some of those little twigs. You can also use it a lot for cutting back those herbaceous perennials. I have switched over to using more of the automated. This is a DeWalt. It's actually a Hedge shears, but it works great for cutting those perennials. And I've upgraded this year. I've got one that's got an automatic shut-off here. This is also new. They've gone with a little bit wider opening on the Hedge shears that they're selling now with the DeWalt tools. So the cordless with the battery options, there's so many tools now. I've had really good luck with this brand. Okay, this is Summer Dawn Potentilla. They're also called Shrubby Cinquefoil. I like to give them a light shearing. You're going to remove some of those spent heads. I think they're showy through the winter, but you're going to encourage new growth. So you get that nice new foliage and just a flurry of new flowers because the Potentillas will bloom on what's called that new wood. The daylily, they're one of the plants I think is a lot easier to clean them up late winter because that foliage, oftentimes, it just releases from the root system. And if you just kind of give them a little bit of a tug like that, you can get these cleaned up pretty quick. You can see down in here close, we've already got a few of the leaves are starting to peek out there a little bit. And one of the reasons I like to get the perennial cut back as soon as I can is once that new growth starts emerging like that, if it starts getting up above that dead tissue, once you're pulling off some of the old dead tissue, you got to be careful or you're going to damage some of those leaves. Unfortunately here, it looks like we are going to have just a little bit of tip burn on this Colorado spruce. I think on the side here, we're getting a little bit too much shade from this tree. So you can start seeing some stress on conifers because of that lack of sunlight. On the other side, it looks like the other side is still looking quite healthy. And they drop their leaves late. Yeah, this is the prairie stature oak, growing quickly. I do have to worry a little bit about the competition here for sunlight between this Taylor sunburst pine that I've got growing behind it. Yeah, that's part of the challenges of overplanting. Unfortunately, on this Taylor sunburst, I did notice we're picking up a scale insect on this. Look at how black that twig is. That's called sooty mold. When the scale insect is sucking those juices out, then a mold comes in and uses that, those carbohydrates, they use that as their food source. So I've got to get after that pine tortoise scale, I think is what it is. Let's go in. I think you can see closely there kind of that orangish pustule. I lost a jack pine to this several years back. I did a quick video on that showing the life cycle. Yeah, you can see that white residue there too. That's also another type of scale. So I'm going to get out here 2 to 3 times this year, and we're going to spray some of the superior horticultural oil sprays, or they're also called dormant sprays. So next we're going to take a look at the Tor birchleaf Spirea. A nice white flowering Spirea, but you can see the rabbits have come in here, and they've done some pruning for us. So we're just going to follow their lead, and I'll probably just prune it back right to that level, even it out just a little bit. But the Spirea, they're one of the favorites for the rabbits. I've got another one, Fire Gold Spirea, that you can take a look at here. They've really pruned this one back, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go ahead and we're just going to cut this back, round it out, and let that new growth flush out of there. Unfortunately, with the Fire Gold, they do bloom on what's called old wood, so we're only going to be able to enjoy the gold foliage this year rather than the white flowers that you can see with it if you don't have to prune it back. Now the Tor birchleaf, it does have a really strong, rigid stem. This Bahco head shears, it does work pretty good, but occasionally you'll hit when you can't quite cut, and that's where it's handy to have that Felco. You can go in there, some of the bigger stems, and you can quick go back and forth. Since this is in a mulch bed, you can see I'm just dropping some of those twigs. Some of them will get raked up. Other ones, they'll just become part of that western red cedar mulch that we've got in this area. Tell you what, after a long winter, this feels really good to get out and start doing some work. And here we've got a perennial that we're not going to be able to pull these stems. We are going to have to go ahead and cut them. Since it's such a small clump, a little bit of rock in this area, I'm going to go ahead and, this is where the Hedge shears just really does a nice job. I do have a pretty nice vacuum system on my mower. Any of the debris that I don't get, I'll get the bulk of it. A lot of that will just get blown out into the lawn in a couple weeks, and the lawn starts drying up, and then we'll just vacuum up that material. Let's go ahead, let's talk about the juniper that we've got growing back here. Okay, you can see it's starting to encroach on our vegetable garden here. So I am going to go ahead, we'll be pruning back some of these longer branches here, probably go back in about 2 to 3 feet. But I'm going to skip over this just because I can do that juniper pruning, well, even 2 months later if I want to. That's one of the chores then in the spring that I usually skip, get the primary work done that I got to get done, and then we'll come back through and we'll get that cleaned up as well. All right, here we're getting into one of the false sunflowers. We'll get those stems cleaned up next. But before we do that, just to the left here, look at this willow. This is a dappled willow, getting some nice coloring on those twigs. I don't think we've got any winter kill on this year. Last year, this thing died back, oh gosh, I think down to about 2 feet. But look at that, that's gonna blast out of there. Beautiful foliage on that dappled willow, the nishiki. But look back here, this is where you can see the stems, those bigger ones. That's how far we cut that back last year. With an established shrub, he's at that developed root system, you can see it easily for a willow. Pushed out 6 feet, maybe even 8 feet of growth. I got so excited to get started doing this, I forgot to put on gloves in the early get-go. A lot of times what I'll use in the spring like this, since you're dealing with usually damp, wet situations, the nitrile gloves with that rubber coating. They're typically pretty cheap gloves. You know, you can get them between $5 and $10. So they're not disposable, but you can actually buy quite a few pair, have them on hand. The downside with that nitrile or rubber coating, it can be a little bit cold on the fingertips, especially when we're in, like I say, the mid-30s here. Here again on this fall sunflower, some of those stems are gonna kind of crack, but I'm gonna go ahead, cut which ones we can. A lot of them have already laid down. This is a perennial during midsummer, kind of goes down, and I didn't stake this one, but it falls down, kind of unruly, not my favorite perennial, but it does have the nice yellow blooms. Let's quick mention this conifer that we've got here. This is one of the yellow Norway spruces. As that flushes out this spring, we should see some yellow growth on that, yellow candling. I'm not seeing as much as I'd like yet. We've got a little bit of a void in this area. Deer came in one season and they really rubbed up against it, but it's slowly filling in, but boy, it's taken many years. Okay, next candidate's up here. This is ash leaf Spirea. I like to leave the tops on those through the winter, I think they provide a little bit of winter interest. This plant does have profuse suckering. So throughout the season, I'm constantly just running the shovel in there, cutting out those little stems. And then over here we've got Joe Pieweed. Here again, yeah, I think the birds are, they're probably coming in here, taking some of these seeds. Unfortunately their time has run out. I need to get after this. But Joe Pieweed's one that's going to emerge quite late in the season. It needs warm soil temperatures, but just a beautiful, beautiful perennial. And we've planted here one of the junipers that has a really, really nice steel blue color during the growing season, but you can see it's picked up some of the plum coloring here. And I'm gonna let this develop and arch out and kind of weave its way into this area, but we're gonna have to stay on top of this. This could easily start encroaching quickly on some of the other shrubs and perennials in this area. But I like to plant things fairly tight. I like to collect plants. And so we're kind of pushing it in a tight area, but as long as you stay on top of it, we'll be just fine. Here again, this is a really quick pruning for the ash leaf spirea. I really, really like it. Other than that suckering habit, it's just quite beautiful throughout the season. A nice foliage, nice flower, and really all I'm targeting here is just those spent flower heads. And now we will break out the automated shears. I usually leave that chore for the head shears, the automatic one. But for the upright rigid stems like this, now we're going to be able to just really quickly breeze through this and cut these back. And right next to it, we've got some of the blue salvia. Same thing, we'll be able to use that automatic shears and make really quick work of that. I usually work through entire areas, cutting back everything that needs attention. Then I'll switch over to cleanup mode. I like using the metal spring-tine rake for this, and often I'll use a large barrel like you see here for easy loading and unloading. The other thing I like about using the barrel, I actually use that as a handy way to put the tool in there as I'm moving from location to location. I also keep tarps handy, and I'll use them more so when I get into longer stems and branches. And then, as I mentioned, we'll come back through with a blower in 2 to 3 weeks to remove some of the lighter debris that remains for a final cleanup. And as I was working over here, I did notice back over next to the bed we left off, this one here, I did have a few other perennials in here. One of them is one of the first to emerge in our area, the pasque flower. You can see how that foliage is kind of laying down, and I think I'm actually going to leave that. I'll do that from time to time if that foliage is quite flat. I think it's going to be okay, and that'll just break down and provide nice mulch and cover for that pasque flower. We'll get this guy out of here. I believe that's a Trolleus. We'll cut those stems back. I think I've got a penstem in here. I can tell by the purple foliage that we've got down there. Some of the leaves, they stay semi-evergreen if they have good cover. And then back over here, looks like one of the sedum. We'll get that cut back as well. I always like to leave those tops on as well too. Sometimes that snow is up a little bit on the stems, and it's kind of showy. Next to these Taylor junipers here, one of my absolute favorite conifers. And then as we move back over here around this gazebo, this is kind of the end of that bed there. This is all marjoram. This is an herb we put in, oh gosh, I bet over 10 years ago. And it was just a couple little transplants, but you can see it's self-seeded. And just kind of taken over this area has just become a very natural, well, a pollinator magnet. We just get just hundreds, if not thousands, of different bees in there. So I'm actually going to come in on that, and I'm going to use a string trimmer or a weed whip, and we'll just knock all that down. It'll help spread those seeds out. Just makes it a lot quicker. This has got a really, really tender, soft stem, so it cuts through easy. We can just grind up those stems into a nice mulch. All right, then we're back to that starting point, and it feels good to get off to an early start, get out of the house, get off the chair, and get some of these perennials cut back, the shrub sheared. I can't wait to do more projects for you all season long. Thanks for stopping by Garden Hike. We'll see you again soon, next video.